Sure? Okay. Let's try it again, Joseph. And I'm
Sure.
present, so you don't have to call my name.
Got it.
Okay.
Yvonne Collado,
Present.
Marilyn Go, Kevin Hanratty, Maria Mateo, Joshua Schneps, Lisa Soren, Monsignor Kevin Sullivan, Kai Ki Wong,
Present.
Mahfoudin, Michael Schnall, Kristen Johnson,
Present.
Gregory Kirschenbaum, Mark Rozelle,
Present.
and Darren Porcher.
Present.
And with that, that concludes the roll call, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. And also, I know several members will be joining us virtually a little while, so we'll include them as we've had done in the past. So a couple of things before we go into our discussions. One, as usual, I want to thank all the commission members for your time and energy, and especially for tonight. I know a number of you have changed your schedules or balancing work or school to deal with this very important meeting. And two, I want to thank you for your ongoing commitment. Just as a reminder, we started this process back in March, and it's been a very engaging process in working with the community, working with each other. And I've always tried to make sure we listen to the variety of voices and also make sure that our commissioners have a chance to give input when they feel it's important to give input. And that's what we're going to try to do tonight as well. And what I would like to do before I open it for the floor for discussion and then have it flow from there is to read some remarks. And I just put the context of where we are right now. And then with those remarks, I'll throw it open to the body and then we can take it from there. So as you know, under the charter, the commission had to submit a plan to the city council for its consideration. And the commission voted 13-1 on October 6th to do so. City council then had a 3-week window period of time, which to determine whether they wanted to object to the plans. And if they do not adopt a resolution by a majority of all of its members, then the plan is deemed adopted. On October 27th, we received from the council through the speaker's office that the city council does not object to the plans and in fact accepts the plan without objection. Therefore, under charter provisions, the plan we voted on October 6, 2022 was deemed adopted. Final steps towards adoption requires the commission to file the plan with the city clerk and include certification statement containing 9 signatures of the commissioners that certifies the plan that it complies with the criteria set forth in section 52 of the charter and in order to list it to the maximum extent possible. And the commission is proud to have been comported with all applicable laws and stands by its work, including the procedures set forth by the charter. The October 6th meeting, representing 13 votes, included an additional symbolic vote in support of approving the plan and forwarding it to the city council. The commission was clear on this process, and the maps in the process would be determined by council response. The city council has now spoken. They do not object to the plan. In fact, improve the plan. But I also know that several of the commissioners wanted to make comments as far as whether the plan or feelings that they have, and we've always tried to be extremely inclusive of this body. We've always been respectful of each other and try to make sure we include that respect in our discussion. And before we move forward with a motion to accept, I wanted to open it up to the floor to commission members to voice any issues or concerns or compliments that they may have for the body, and then we'll take it from there. So with that being said, commissioners, and I know certain commissioners had comments they wanted to make, so I'll defer to the commissioners for any comments. Commissioner Schnall.
We checked YouTube, that affects that they're not getting sound.
Okay, so YouTube said they're not getting sound. We are recording this, so,
There's sound?
okay.
All right, let them know.
Yeah, people are on YouTube watching, so that way. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess I'll talk a bit just because from my perspective, I wasn't exactly sure of this process. My understanding was we sent to the city council and it's either passed or it's not. And I guess in this case, it's coming back to us. So it's not a decision that's been made. It's really for us to make the decision.
No, go ahead. Let me let you finish, John.
Yeah, so, for me, I read through the letters that we received, which were a lot of feedback.
I think we got 8 letters saying they had questions about particular districts.
Yeah, and there were a
then
lot of others that had positive feedback.
They had others that had positive. I just wanted to
Yeah.
balance it out for the people who are listening. that's all.
100%.
Okay.
So, I think some of the letters did specifically go through one of the changes in particular that I wanted to make the last time that we had brought it up prior to going to the city council. So I personally would like to bring that up and see whether or not that change can in fact be made.
So let me respond this way. One, as far as the process, the city council did send us back a letter basically saying they supported us in that regard, what was submitted to them. And that was, as you know, a 13-1 vote. So that part was done by the city council. And as a body, the city council did not make an objection at all. You had individual people, as you indicated, 8, and I think you had others who were favorable, and then most who didn't comment one way or the other. As far as the part that you had raised before and you're raising now, again, I think John, through the body as executive director, is in a position to respond to each of the ones that people have specific questions
Yep.
around a particular comment that was made by the city council. If that's what you're asking, I'd be glad to ask John.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess my question also is, are we gonna, as a group right now, in today's meeting, I'm not sure exactly
Okay, I'm sorry. Then,
what the specific point of it is, but I thought it would be to discuss some of the issues that were brought up by the city council.
that's why and I opened it the way I did because I wanted to make sure that people have the opportunity to raise those type of questions. And as a body, I'm in a position to say for me that we have done our due diligence. We have 9 signatures at this particular point to file it with the city clerk. But we also want to be extremely conscious of trying to get the affirmation of the body to understand where we are before we file. So that's the process that we want to undertake.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I would like to see how we can make some changes based on the feedback of the city council.
But again, I think the city council as a body met its letter of the law and submitted to us without objection and so we have the ability to file it with the city clerk. And any change, as we've gone through several times in the past, impacts another change down the line. And we've tried this, and I think we've been very clear as both our transparency in the process, especially the last round of reviews that we did on the maps and opening up for the public to see about those particular changes and how one thing impacts another. And as a result of having a 13-1 vote, I think we were somewhat, if not totally happy, because we understand, and we've said this very clearly, that there will always be someone who will be unhappy. So any change that one recommends for something in one area will impact another area. And we tried really hard along that line. And so I am very comfortable where we are to eventually call for an affirmation vote of what we have in place to submit to the city clerk. And so.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm giving my perspective.
Oh, no.
Obviously, everybody
no.
has to give theirs. My feeling is if some of the feedback can be adjusted without creating these changes into other districts and create domino effects and really throw the whole thing into chaos, I get it. But I think based on some of the feedback, some of these changes are quite minor, but would be important to some of the communities.
So if I may, and then I'll defer to others as well and to John on the changes. I think we as a body made a concerted attempt to incorporate all the discussion points of commissioners and others as far as changes and very clear of the domino impact it would have on another district. And again, out of a body of 51 members, we had 8 people who responded, and that can have a drastic impact on other areas. And we've tried this, and we tried it in a number of ways in looking at various districts. And so along that line, again, I think, and I say this in both thanking the body and also the public, in that, as you know, we had 630,000 new residents that we had to incorporate. We had a 5% deviation that we had to factor in. We had to deal with the existing number of city council seats. We had Voting Rights Act. We had the issues of one person, one vote. And all those variables, as well as following the charter, we adhered to all of those variables and we explored the many questions that people, both council members who participated, as well as people who are non-elected officials who participated, in trying to factor that into the discussion and decision points. And we know that there, at least I'll speak for myself, I know that there will be people who may not be happy, whether they're elected officials or people in respective communities. But I think we've met the letter of the law as far as adhering both to the charter, adhering to Voting Rights Act, adhering to one person, one vote, and trying to balance out the many variables we had to face as a commission to address the needs of the city population, and especially factoring in 5% deviation, Voting Rights Act, 630,000 new people. So I just say
No,
that
absolutely.
with
Listen, I
all
think
due
we-
respect.
I
with
think we
all the-
all get that and I respect.
So
that and
any,
appreciate
so
that.
I
just
say
feel-
that not to be dramatic. I say that there really isn't any such thing as a small change that would not have a domino effect in other areas as well. And we saw that at the last time. And we saw that with the whole transparency piece that we opened it up for the public to see the back and forth and trying to do things to address the suggestions of individual commission members, elected officials, and the public itself. And then we made minor and adjustments in this last process, thus resulting in the 13-1. And that's just my general response to the points about any change and then potentially opening it up. It's not that simple just to open it up and then all of a sudden you make that change. When you open it up, then you also have to open up the entire city for that process. We've been through that process a number of times and put a lot of people hour into that process. And we put a lot of energy, both from a staff point of view and a commission point of view. And while, again, there will always be individuals who want it done differently or handle this particular district that way, I think we were very inclusive in the process to the best of our ability of factoring all of that in and then coming up with the maps that we came up with that meet the letter of the law. So I'm just
Yeah,
my,
no, listen, I hear what you're saying. I'm just taking the perspective that there wasn't a tremendous amount of feedback. And if we could take some of that.
when you say there wasn't a tremendous amount of feedback, what do you mean?
You brought up about 8 versus.
Oh, you mean feedback from the city council?
Yeah, from the city council. So my perspective is if some of that can be addressed without creating chaos, we should try.
And I
And it
guess,
has been a long road, but I feel like, I got an email with, all these responses. I read through them all, which
Mhm.
was quite intensive. I don't think we had any communication since then. So my point is, if we can make some things right, which don't cause chaos, why not try?
but again, and I'm not going to belabor it, but I will put this 1 second, in that we have been down the road of exploring the various options, again, by both individuals and elected officials. And I mean, it was open to the public to see, for people to see, and that we have tried to do, I'm not going to single out any one particular area, but a single issue popped up in a particular district. But then we saw, well, that may impact this area, and then it impacts this area. Once you open it up, I mean, and then we were able to find, I think, the balance for 5 boroughs that met the needs of all the requirements we had to fulfill, as well as try to factor in what the commissioners were raising at the different points. And even at times when there were times when commissioners may raise something and it may have not been achievable, we gave it due diligence, you all right? Gave it due diligence in that regard. And we never disrespected, but now to say, well, not having major chaos, it's not just chaos. We have a time requirement we have to fulfill. And we have a requirement to make sure we understand the dynamics, that there isn't one such thing. And I think of one particular conversation that we had, again, that was open to the public to see, as far as a particular district. And it did create a domino effect. And we had to pull back on that, if you remember, because of the domino effect and how it just had a bouncing point going up to the Bronx eventually, as a result of starting in a particular area. We have done, I think, a thorough job in reviewing, dissecting, analyzing, inputting, and sometimes backing up on things. And to reopen that process for any change, I say, is not a minor issue. It's something that has significant impact as far as the city maps are concerned. And we have a responsibility to understand that, especially since we adhered to, I think, the due diligence of our responsibility as a commission and meeting the mandates that were set forth before us as far as what our responsibilities were. So that's just my reaction to your point.
So I'm gonna jump in and follow up on some things for Josh. I don't know if I can.
It doesn't move, Bill.
So allow me to play devil's advocate for a moment. So I was dissecting all this and I took, listen, at the end of the day, this whole process has been probably one of the most amazing and educated, educational filled process. But I'm gonna have to, with Josh, just because for a minute, I guess, where do the letters stand, the objections on the, and I'm reading through some of them. One of them sounded like really dire, but it goes back to the discussion Mark and whoever had,
Michael, probably Michael.
right, that one kind of sort of hit me when Mark was talking about the changes at the end of the Brooklyn side. There's a couple of comments with the Bronx, but that one seems to be coming up a lot with the objection. Although not Brooklyn, and there's tweaks in my things here and there, but I honestly believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? I was under the impression that we can have more discussions on the objections. I'm not clear, like I read through this and made whatever notes, but putting that aside, is there a way to address like the one elephant in the room that was a continued conversation that I feel has been had, hearing one, hearing two, where the voting has happened? Because, and I get it, Chair, we're all tired and frustrated. But if we're gonna do this and finally put our seal of approval on anything, I just think a little more discussion, not to say that we need to go into full hearings or whatever the case may be, but given the opportunity, to Josh's point, and I don't know who else may feel that way, that seems to be a consistent major objection that has not been addressed, not among us commissioners, not among the community. And if it's that big of an issue that we ourselves haven't been able to come to terms with, I think it's only fair to say that if we put this much work into what we've done, just stalling, or stalling is the wrong word, being able to address that and fix it. We can't please everybody. That part, 150%. We're gonna hear it. We'll try to tweak here and there. We've had conversations with residents, elected, gone through all the letters. But that blaring problem within the districts in Brooklyn are a major issue. And they continue to keep coming up. It's one of the biggest objections on this. Whether we can do the process, I believed, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when we approved everything to move it to city councils, we really wanted to move this thing forward, right? And bring it back to us, final discussion, signed, sealed, and delivered. But this particular issue, again, doesn't impact me, but there's like 3 letters that stand out to me. But the Brooklyn one stands out even further because as commissioners, we couldn't agree. And we closed it because the arguments kept going back and forth. So I have to say, to Josh's point, can it be a discussion? Not to open up the whole thing or start, but I think it's a fair discussion to be had because we ourselves couldn't convince ourselves to do. I'm just putting it out there. I just feel that that's one issue we need to address.
So if I can, just one thing
Of
to
course.
say for the public record, at no time did I say I was tired or frustrated. So no, I want to be very clear because you said that in the beginning and no, I want to be very clear and I don't want that impression ever to be made as far as,
Never.
and I know you didn't mean it, but I don't want to have that as part of the public record. I think we have a
No,
due diligence and that's what
absolutely. I
part of this
just think-
discussion is.
I apologize for the wording. It's, first of all, it's really hot in here.
Yeah, it's November though. That's why.
I know it's.
No one knew it'd be 67 degrees, 71 degrees today. So, but-
So no, my apologies on the wording. I just think we put in a lot of work. I've never worked so hard on something
so let me,
based on education. Otherwise, I just think that allowing the other commissioners to come back and say how they totally feel on that, especially that one issue. If we combine them, we can probably fix the three major oppositions without having to do the whole domino effect. That is the hope. Hope is not a strategy. Somebody's always told me that, but I'd like to be able to address. it.
Mark, I see Mark, and then I get to Maria.
Mr. Chair, I think it might be helpful if either John or Grace could explain what the ramifications of what Josh is recommending we do,
Mhm.
whether it's look at multiple districts and make changes, or just a tweak to the plan that we adopted on October 6th, because the charter lays out exactly what the ramifications are. So, I was wondering.
Yeah, before I do that, I want to be,
Or Grace could kind of.
yeah, I will. Let
just-
me just be respectful to a couple of other members, and then they can do it all together, Maria.
Just a second, Lisa, it is true, it's not a secret that this has been an exhaustive process for all of us. And as much as I want to get this, to see it to the end, it is also true that there were some objections by some city council members. It is a testament of our work that there weren't as many objections. And I believe that 8 objections or maybe less that we're all here together today. If there is something that we can do right now to resolve it and move this and certify it, then let's do it now.
Kevin, I saw your
Mr. Chair,
hand.
yeah,
Again.
I think I was under the understanding, at least that this meeting would, even though the council as a body did not object, at this meeting, we would have the opportunity to address some of the individual objections.
That's what we're doing.
And I was hoping to possibly redress them if the body could come to a consensus. So that was my hope for this meeting, and I
Sure. Nope, I
think
know you had raised that
that's-
beforehand.
That's.
So let me now pick up on the suggestion that was made around John and Grace to make comments. And again, I'm just responding from my point of view as we experience and as even indicated, that there's no such thing as a little tweaking when you open it up, but I'll defer to John and Grace for their comments as far as process. So.
Good evening, Commissioners. Clearly, I'm here listening to the Commissioners' comments. And one of the, I think, one of the first points that occurs to me that I think may be a misinterpretation. The letter that came from the City Council was from the Speaker of the City Council, speaking on behalf of the entire City Council. You got a copy of that letter. That also letter indicated that it was attaching additional comments from other council members, individuals, but they were not speaking for the City Council. Can we all agree on that point? So what we have is a small list of individual council members that raised some questions that were forwarded to this distinguished body, but it is not speaking for the City Council. The City Council, the entire body, the entire legislative body of the City Council has taken their official position, which is to approve and accept this commission's final map from October 6th. That's one point I think that we would need to all be on the same page. They do not have those individual, I'm just fit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like, I'll stop.
No, go ahead, John. Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Okay. So I think it's very important to have that clarity. Those individual comments do not have the same weight as the full body's position that is already conveyed officially to this body, that it has signed off, it has approved the entire map of October 6th that this commission has already produced. Okay, so part two, for we as staff, we dove into those addenda that were forwarded as well. And I think there were 18 attachments. 10 of them were actually complimentary letters to the commission. And then there were an additional 8. This is how we've analyzed those addenda. Those 8 where there were specific additional kinds of questions or recommendations or requests that they wanted the commission to entertain. And if you want to, we've reviewed those 8 staff, and we do have an assessment of each one of those. I'm not sure that you want to hear everything in detail or how you want us to proceed.
So what I heard Mark say was, if you can just go into details. I think a lot of what I'm hearing, and you folks correct me if I'm wrong, is specific to one particular area that we've gone back and forth and back and forth on. I mean, we have discussed this. So that's why, and I'm not trying to minimize it because I respect every comment that people are making. But in my head, at least, it would be different if we didn't give it the due diligence and discussion that we've given it. And we've given it a tremendous amount of discussion and knowing that. But I think what Mark asked for is the nuances, and the other commissioners who have spoken have asked for about a tweak and what the implications are for tweak. And is a tweak really a tweak? Or is a tweak more than a tweak?
So
If I can just make a point, just to piggyback on what John said, it's a nuance. The council didn't adopt what the speaker said is, we urge you to basically go ahead and file this plan. We do not object.
We do not object as a body.
Charter addresses their only role in this process is to object to the plan. And as a legislative body, they did not. They also have an obligation to forward any comments, objections, and they also forwarded just as many, if not more, letters that were very complimentary of the work of this commission. But, I was wondering at this point, maybe Grace can kind of dive into what if we contemplated changing, I guess, to drill down to the micro level. If we contemplated changing one block of this currently adopted plan that the council did not formally object to, what does that set in motion for the commission?
And I would like to address that as well,
Sure, of course.
from a technical standpoint.
Yeah.
But general counsel first.
Sure. So I will address where we are in the charter process and what the charter says specifically. So the charter says specifically that when we submit the plan to city council, they have within the 3-week window that we talked about, that period to decide whether or not by a majority of vote of its members to deliver a resolution objecting to the plan. If they don't return a resolution objecting to the plan, which they did not, and this is the case where we at, then the plan is deemed adopted. If they had returned a resolution objecting to the plan, they would return the plan to us and give us those individual letters. Then the charter says, then when we receive the resolution and the objections, the commission shall prepare a revised plan. And then you go through, the same process of potentially revising the plan, making it available for the public for comment and inspection, and then going into public hearings.
That's only if the council objects
Correct.
as a body,
Correct.
not individuals.
Correct. the nuance that Mark is talking about here. You want to discuss revising the plan. Well, then there is an argument to be made that if you start revising the plan, and as we have all seen in our public mapping sessions, it can have ramifications throughout the city and the borough based on, especially the population deviation. And if we end up revising the plan and you have that tweak, there's an argument that you have revised the plan and you have to make that available to the public for inspection and comment. You go through the whole process that we just discussed, where you would revise the plan, make it available for comment and inspection, and opening it up to the public for another round of public hearings. And the deadline that we currently face, based on the charter, is December 7th to achieve all of that. So that's kind of the nuance there.
John?
So if you were to move into that territory, those 8 areas that were raised, they were raised having to do with Dyker Heights, for example, South Brooklyn. Then there was another letter that talked about the West Side, Manhattan. Let's tweak a few more blocks on the West Side, right? We know how tightly designed is Manhattan with those 10 districts that were very delicately balanced. South Brooklyn, we spent an inordinate amount of time moving around in Brooklyn, South Brooklyn. This could easily, any touch in either one, there was a second area that was raised by a council member next door coming eastward, right, in South Brooklyn. That's half of the borough. There are 16 council districts in Brooklyn, and half of them are in South Brooklyn. If you start moving blocks or pieces of neighborhoods around there, you will reverberate across approximately as much as 4 or 5 or council member districts, not to mention the 43. This is one of the favorites of Commissioner Wong. He hasn't spoken yet. If you start moving those pieces of blocks around, you're gonna spend time remapping Brooklyn, period. And there are 16 council districts in that borough.
Can I just add one point to that, and Lisa, and I think Maria as well, but in that, I don't know, and I wasn't trying to be funny about it. I mean, tweak is not a tweak because of the reverberations that it would have, but then also, how do you separate out one objection by an individual member versus another objection by another member? And what the implications are for that? And what potential that means for, well, you singled out them, but you didn't really take this one seriously, or you didn't take that one seriously. And that's why they're individual. It's not the body of the city council. And so that's why we want to be careful not to, for me at least, convey that a tweak is such a small thing. We have been through this exercise and this process a number of times, and we have experienced the, I think, dramatic impact at times as far as what it means, as far as going from 1, 2, 3 blocks, and then, okay, that impacts 4,000 people. So now you got to pull 4,000 from someplace else to put into this particular area. But also you got to make sure there's the racial balance to meet the voting rights requirements that are part of that discussion as well. I mean, the tweak is not just that simple, and we've been around and around. The judge, and then Maria. I don't know if Maria, okay.
If I could just get 1 or 2 more important points, I think, out. Don't forget, or for every district, there are adjacent districts. Yes, of course. These are unilateral requests here. There's no indication that there's been any consultation amongst those colleagues, agreement, or anything of that nature. These are unilateral requests to move pieces of neighborhoods or blocks from a colleague's councilmanic district, and we don't know if they're on board with this, or are we supposed to negotiate now amongst a cohesive group or subgroup of council members from that area? That you have not been called on officially to play that role up until now. And that's what you'll also maybe taking on if you get to that, get to this road.
Judge?
I just want to make two comments. One is the city charter makes clear, and that's in section 51D, that if there are no objections, then the plan is deemed adopted. So, and I think that's what Commissioner Wazell was asking. Is there any procedure within the city charter that permits anything more? But if the plan is deemed adopted under the city charter, I don't know how we can go in contravention of that provision. But more importantly, we've been very open with our hearings. We've had extensive hearings. City council members have had the opportunity to voice their views. Some of them have come and testified at our hearings. And so the fact that they are making objections now, to me, seems a little late. They could have made their views, but and obviously, I don't fault people for coming to a belated realization because of our evolving plans. Our plan was finally approved on October 6th. So, or I should say, our preliminary plans were forwarded to the city council. They may not be perfect, but I have no problem certifying that it was in accordance with the provisions of the city charter. And I don't see where there is room to spend more time moving lines here and there.
Thank you, Judge. Lisa?
I feel like I'm.
Or
the-
Commissioner Soren?
It's fine. Totally respected. And like I said, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a moment. And I wish we would have been able to have this discussion before coming here tonight. Just to iron out. I don't think that if we open it up, which I know nobody wants to do, but I just like the conversation, that we would be breaking anything with the charter. Am I correct, Grace? If we decide just to have the discussion, and I know the word tweaking is like oversimplifying.
So I just wanted to clarify, what do you mean by discussion?
Because
Do you,
the judge, well, right now we're just right in conversation with the letters and we're going through the whole thing. And it's deemed adoptable, but doesn't mean that we have to certify it today unless we want to have additional conversations. Is that correct? We wouldn't be breaking the charter.
again, I'm not exactly sure what you mean by discussion.
Well,
Well,
do
are
we
you
have
trying
to
to?
certify today, come hell or high water?
Well,
Or
Yes,
what?
yes
No,
No, I'm just saying so that we can have a further discussion on this instead of.
a further
like,
discussion to do what?
to discuss the fact of the judge is saying tweaking lines, but this, and I understand, I know that I seem to be frustrating some people, but please bear with me for
No,
1 minute.
no frustration.
Listen, I've been there right alongside everyone, and this is just as difficult for me as it is for everyone. But you're right, we're not playing favorites here for a city council person or whatever. And yes, the majority of the city council voted and adopted this. Does not mean that every single one of them approved it, right? The Speaker Adams, who is amazing, said yes on behalf because they had the majority. Does not take away from the fact that we can still have a discussion on this. But so here's my question. Do we have to certify today or not?
It is my goal to either,
No, I know your goal, but I'm saying, do we have to by law?
Can,
No, I just,
your master technician here, I'll give you a technician's answer.
no, I just need a yes or no.
Yes,
Yes,
because we're pushed, we're working with a calendar here.
No,
We
John,
gotta
so
turn
you asked the question,
over
you said yes.
the results, the work of
Okay.
this commission. We're not at the end of the road here.
Can
We
I
have to
just say
hand our
something?
work over to the New York City
John,
Board of Elections
John,
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to.
No, you're not. You're kind of up.
But I'm not
upset,
sure-
and I get, and I totally understand. Look, we can go. back and
Commissioner,
forth.
I'm trying to get a definition though, what further conversation.
Well,
Hold on, John, hold on.
Yeah,
What
I-
does further conversation mean now?
I want to address the issue with Brooklyn,
But we are, we addressed
going
it.
through-
We voted 13-1.
No.
We did.
to move it to city.
But
Look, I'm
but
not
how are you
looking-
singling out?
I'm
Hold on.
sing-
So for the public to know, the
Okay,
commission, I don't want people to misread the back and forth.
no, this is
No.
what it's all about.
The commissioner and I have a very nice, direct conversation
Absolutely.
with each other. So if you see the dynamic, I want people
It's
who,
respectful.
yeah. We've gone through this process, one.
Mhm.
And then how do you single out, you said specifically Brooklyn, but how
Right.
do you single out the others? I mean, you're opening up the entire city. I think we have a responsibility to affirm what has been put before us. And yes, go ahead, Maria. I see you leaning. No, go ahead. After you, really.
I think what Lisa means, and I don't want to speak
No, it's
for
fine.
you, but me as an attorney, I want to know that I am following the law and that whatever we're doing, it's within the boundaries of the law. So my question is direct to Grace, which is our counsel.
General counsel. Mhm.
And I want to know if within the charter, today is the deadline to vote to certify, yes or no?
No,
Okay, thank you.
but
So,
the
Wait, this is not a
commission,
court of law right
well,
now,
the
so-
commission as a public body needs to move forward on how to proceed. So when you mean discussion, what does that really mean?
Well,
I think
that's
the
an-
commission has to agree as a public body, as a majority, to proceed in a certain way forward.
Monsignor?
It's deemed adopted.
So, so, thank you, Monsignor, because the basic question is that people have asked me, why are you even meeting? And because it's been deemed adopted. And the response that I give people, because I know that certain commissioners have issues or questions, and I never, ever like to cut our commissioners off if they ever have questions. But at the same time, it's been deemed adopted. And go ahead, Maria.
It's
When you
been
lean forward like that.
adopted.
Mhm.
Yes, I'm going to ask a question or say a comment. But we still have to certify it, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And what's involved in certification?
So we need 9 signatures on the certification statement.
Do we have 9 signatures on the certification statement?
We do.
Yes.
And at the same time, I think there may be even additional ones that possibly will sign as well, but we have 9 at this point. And that goes to the heart of the discussion as far as people ask me, why are we even here? But again, I know there's been pent up discussions around having a conversation. And again, I don't want to have it behind the scenes. I want it out in front. And that's the way we've run this body, and that's the type of discussion that we've had.
I just want to say one thing, and I'm sorry, John, I interrupted you, but I'm hearing what can't happen. So I guess the question is, what can happen? And in all due respect, what is your role in determining what can and cannot happen? I'm asking an honest question, because then I don't know why we're here today.
Well, I just got through saying that. I mean, to tell you why we're here, I mean,
Because my understanding was that we were going to talk about what the feedback was.
and that's.
Now, I didn't know anything else because nothing else was communicated. So I don't know why we're being told that this is the way it has to be and you can't do it any other way, because then that should have been sent to us in an email and communicated to us.
What do you mean the map should have been sent to you?
No,
You
saying that
voted-
it's over,
I'm not sure.
because what I'm hearing is that our feedback, we're not going through feedback, and that the council's decision is final. I mean, basically, that's what I'm hearing.
It was laid out in the charter, and I think the judge captured it very well. And the reason, I mean, we could have been just as easily not meeting. But again, I said that's prerogative that I put in place as far as having this discussion, just to hear feedback from individuals. But as it's been laid out by the charter, and as per what the city council did, is that we technically did not have to meet today. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure, one, we're able to get the voices of the commission out as we've talked about. But again, I think part of the discussion is to, for me at least, to address some of the impressions that people have as far as either what took place or what's taking place. And there's no, and again, my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, there's no such thing as a tweak. And I don't know how one separates out one versus the others. And then you have an impact. You have the impact of an entire city. And so that's a, yes, ma'am.
We do not have to separate one. We can go over the objections, which are only 8. And very quickly, right now, we have the quorum. We can do it.
Do what though? What's the it? What's your it?
Revise the objections.
Revise the objections? You
Yeah,
mean?
just go over
No,
them.
no. No.
Just to add to that, my discussion of the city charter provision, the provision requires objections, any objections posed by a council member to be forwarded back to the commission, irrespective of whether or not the council objects or not. So that we're putting too much emphasis on the fact that 8 objection letters were forwarded to us. It's required in the city charter that any objections from individual members submitted to the speaker by a date shall be transmitted to the districting commission, whether or not the council objects to such districting plan. So it is in compliance with the provision of the city charter that we got the 8 objections. So I do think it's rather remarkable that there were only 8 objections.
Yeah, I find that.
Perhaps if we had 20 objections, we might not be so inclined to listen to them all. But we did all read those objections, and those involved issues that we had, not specifically, but we certainly areas of New York City that we had specifically considered.
Mark?
A couple of comments. First, I applaud the chair for scheduling this meeting so that we could have this discussion. But just to emphasize the things that we were informed of, Grace, just to sum up what Grace told us, if we, as a commission, decide to make a change, multiple changes, 1 block, 1 house, 1 street, we open up this process again. We are obligated under the charter to conduct public hearings and to present a revised plan for inspection by the city council and the general public. So I just want and that was my purpose of asking Grace and John that question. So there is essentially, there can be a discussion and there can be a consensus. We have to change the maps. I want everybody to know, walking into that process, that you have reopened the process again for this revised plan to be published and to be subject to public hearings and submission to the council. Council doesn't get a second shot at objecting to it, but you're reopening the process, whether it's 1 block or multiple blocks, whether it's 1 district or multiple districts. So again, I applaud the chair. I appreciate the fact that he opened this up so we could talk about these issues. I certainly came here with an open mind. I certainly would have liked someone to articulate exactly what the changes would be that they're proposing in order for me to consider them and actually possibly voting for that, knowing that that reopens the entire process.
If I
That
may.
hasn't happened
So,
so far this evening.
so you hit the nail.
So
Oh,
the last point I wanted to make is the point that perhaps is kind of sliding unnoticed in this process. Is that in order for this plan to be filed with the city clerk, to then make its way to the Board of Elections, it requires 9 signatures. And if 9 signatures have been obtained, then this plan can be forwarded. It is deemed adopted and it can be forwarded. It can be, we can walk it across the street to the city clerk's office and file it, although I think they're probably closed now. But we can file that plan right now. So again, I appreciate that the chair opened this forum up so we could actually talk about these issues, because I know I can't imagine that any of us were completely satisfied with the final result of this process. And only one of us actually went on the record opposing that plan because of his, his concern and the issues that he advocated for. And I share that, but I still voted for the plan. And I did so with reservations. And I not to speak for any of my colleagues up here, we all voted for this and we all may have had reservations, personal, professional, all of those things wrapped up. But overall, we got to a plan which met the consensus and the support of the overwhelming majority of the panel. So again, I applaud the chair for opening this up, this discussion, but everybody should know that a small change, a large change is going to require that this process be reopened to the general public, for public hearings, and we're going to have to produce another map. And as John pointed out, we are bumping up against deadlines, but deadlines sometimes get, they don't get met.
True. So if I'm gonna,
Yes,
thank
Lisa.
you, Mark. So I'm gonna be the most hated person when I leave here today. So there's a couple of things that you hit on. First of all, I literally went through every piece of the charter. So everything you're telling me respectfully, totally understand. The calling of this meeting today is not respectful because I happen to have a lot of respect for our chair. It's by law that we're supposed to meet. So it's not a favor of us sitting here. By law, aren't we supposed to sit down and have this conversation? It wasn't supposed to go directly to.
Not necessarily.
So then
Not
what is the
necessarily.
purpose of sending letters? And so then
We,
I was under the impression, please correct me 1 second.
Mhm.
I was under the impression, see, this conversation I would have loved to have last week so that we wouldn't get into detail into this and the public assumed that we all don't get along and do kumbaya. But to Mark's point, we could have addressed all this had we discussed it as a group, but we haven't spoken to each other since October 6th, right? We get this, we read it individually. So this meeting was called in twofold. I was under the impression we call, we vote, we certify. But what you're saying is you already have the 9 signatures. So technically, this is just a forum for conversation, which I would have preferred to have last week,
but it would have been impossible to have it last week, isn't that?
just among us.
No, because we would not have had the information back from the city council. We
Well,
scheduled this literally. I mean, we got the information back from the city council on the 27th, I think. of
so
October.
could
So-
it, could we not had been able to address just us, have a conversation? So instead of having it publicly, this conversation can continue to happen. And you're shaking no, but
No.
so my second part to that is, and I know I'm frustrating everybody along the line, but I really want to stick to my guns here because I feel like now it's kind of shifted the conversation for me from, I really want to discuss this to, I'm being told that I, as a commissioner, I have no choice but to sit here, accept it. And that's the rule the city council adopted and I have to go with it. Respectfully, that's not the case, right?
Mr. Chair, can I?
But one
No,
second,
no
Mark.
one, I just want to make this point. No one is saying we are precluded
Right.
from
No.
doing anything here. I think that the chair, the staff asked us to all hold this time for a discussion.
Right.
We didn't know what the council was going to do. The council had 3 weeks to decide. what
No,
to
I know
do.
that you're
So we didn't
repeating
know
yourself and I
until-
respectfully
We didn't know
understand that.
until Thursday afternoon what the council. was
Totally
gonna do.
respect that. I know
But
you're,
I think that some people some of the commissioners expressed to the chair They had some concerns. They wanted to talk about them, and that's why we're here tonight.
Okay,
That's
so,
that's what we're talking about. And I think, the staff has made it clear that if we
Mark.
as a body, as a commission,
Mark,
decide to address these
Hold on one second.
concerns and make modifications to the plan, it opens it up for another round.
you're
of public
repeating yourself,
hearing.
and I
So, Lisa,
totally understand that.
So make your point. I mean,
So my point is, if we're having a discussion, we're having a discussion, but the replies I continue to have is one, the 9 signatures, which at this point, I'd like to know who the 9 are, and we can wrap
Not
this up and
secret.
continue to have these
And
conversations.
then we have others who may sign as well, so,
I thought after today, you walk it across the street.
but we can get other signatures. I mean,
Okay, so bottom line is, I would love to know who the 9, and the second part of that is, this discussion did it have to be public hearing and us
Yes.
not being able to have a conversation to go? Because then what's happening is, with all due respect, now I'm going to take off a hat, we're kind of like rubbing each other the wrong way without having a real dialogue, right? Everybody keeps repeating the rules to me. I've read them. I've been by your side the entire time. I get it. We've had the discussion. What I'm saying is that what's wrong with having a deeper conversation, not to stop the process or opening it up. Let's just discuss it. Why are we just shutting the door? Because the majority of the city council said yes. We're commissioners, right? We were appointed to this. We spent, the last time you said, I think it was like 77 hours, unpaid, volunteer. So if I choose to want to, or other commissioners choose to want to just get into a little deeper, just in general conversation without going back and forth, this is an attack on the process. We've done cross our T's, dot our I's. I recognize what the law is. I've read it. I would have liked to have just a deeper conversation, and none of this would be happening right now.
So,
But my
I'm sorry.
point is not to be disrespectful nor anything else, but I also do not want to sit here and be told that this is what we have to do because city council did. No, the charter doesn't read exactly like that. Grace just put it forward. You have the 9 signatures. Technically, you don't need us if I choose not to sign on that dotted line, which respectfully, that's okay. But the discussion still has to happen, and I don't need the rules read to me when all I want to do is have the conversation.
so to avoid the circular part of this conversation that you're talking about, and when you talk about deeper, one, anytime we meet as a body, we
Mhm.
have to meet as a public body.
Okay,
Because there's no such thing unless we break off into groups below a quorum level. We
well, maybe I
cannot,
should have called a couple of people in Brooklyn.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
What?
Yes, I said maybe then I should have had more one-on-ones with you guys to better understand this process, but
So I mean, when you say a deeper discussion, I mean, we're having that discussion now, and there are people who say, why did you even call the meeting? And it's for the purpose. But again, if we go into the opening it up, and this is why I want to try to avoid the circular conversation, because we are going to be repeating it. It's not like we can just make a decision here and open it up. There is an opening up that then opens it up for the entire city.
absolutely.
It's not for one, yeah. And we've been through that.
Yeah, so as someone who's objected from the very beginning, and I'm not an objectionable person, and in fact, the person who, the gentleman who's holding the sign, was one of the people who suggested moving the entire Warbass houses into
don't know what Warbass
48
is.
council
Oh,
district.
that's how.
And because of a technical issue, it was split, unfortunately. The commissioner, he called for a vote, and we voted not to move those 3 houses from 48 into 47. And then we voted 13 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, to move these maps forward. And interestingly enough, I was one of the first people to raise my hand, run into Manhattan and sign that certification. And
You read Edgerton?
No.
Yes, Commissioner Udine.
Okay,
The reason why I volunteered so willingly to certify was I figured that if 51 council members, with the exception of the 8 objections, were willing to go along with all of the things that they had seen throughout the course of this, and my 3 city council counterparts in Staten Island no longer objected to the adding of a piece of Brooklyn, my job was done. That's how I read the charter, that because they did not object, that the process was over. And I too had questions on what we were going to do tonight, and I'd love to have further discussions, but I think it's now outside of the realm of the maps. I think
Right.
this is now just for for the record, that goes in a time capsule, and in 10 years from now, everyone reads about this conversation to inform the next 10 years. So I think at this point, I'd like to call the question. I'd like someone to make a motion to do something. And I don't know what that is, but I think we should bounce it to Commissioner Schnapp's because he made the original proposal to see what it is that you'd like us to do. And, then we'll vote on it.
I mean, I'd like us to go through the objections and see whether or not we want to make changes.
But that requires, are you requesting that we have the process again?
If need be, sure,
To read
yes.
them and.
I keep hearing, in my personal opinion is, so what? If it was December 1st, I understand.
So what?
Opening up the process. I don't think that's such a big ask. We're here to do a job.
So you want to read, so I think, so is it a multi-step process? Do you want to just have someone read the objections to the group and discuss?
Well, I
And
would
then
go
dis-
back to the issue that I had from day one, which was in regards to the War Bass houses. I think a lot of people felt that
Okay.
at that point, that if they moved on, that it would be done.
So if I
And
could,
that
I'm
doesn't
sorry.
seem to be the case. I think a lot of people here felt once it went to the city council, it was either passed or it wasn't. Because that's what my
Yeah.
thought was.
I think we all.
We agree, and that's what it is. And so Grace, looked like you were going to say something. Okay, so I would
So what's the motion? Is the motion just to have a discussion? Or is the motion to have a
Oh.
discussion and reopen the mapping process? I guess that's the clarity that I'd like, because
Yeah,
then we can
I-
vote on that. We can
Fine, If
vote.
we
on-
want to reopen the mapping session, I would bring that up then, fine.
Okay, so make the motion then. Is your
Well-
motion to,
Don't we have
to
to
make
know
them,
who the
make the motion?
signatures are so that we
No.
can, oh.
why do you have to, you don't have to know that. You want to, he's putting a motion on the floor to reopen the
But if we
mapping
have the
process.
9 certifications, can we do this? If it's already 9 votes?
We have this signatory. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure.
Grace,
Yeah, so again, we have the certification statement, but we should vote to file the certification statement. So is there a
We can vote that
motion?
down.
Yeah, but wait a minute. You have the 9 confused.
Well, I'm saying that if there's a motion on the floor, because the commissioners right now are discussing how to proceed. The commissioners should vote. So, well, they should move forward in this process. And
I would also just say, so there's 9 acceptances.
we could still submit. No, we could still submit.
It doesn't require a vote in the charter.
It just,
It requires 9 signatures.
but based on all the back and forth that's taking place right now, just an affirmation of that. Yes, Maria?
I
And it has been deemed adopted, and there are 9 signatures to certify.
correct, but
Yes.
So can we be made aware of who are those 9
Oh, sure.
signatures?
I mean, we're
right
not trying to
now?
hide it. I mean, that's not an issue at all. And so hold on one second. Yeah, I mean, I signed. Yeah. Right. And then
we had,
people who are, Kirschenbaum is there, Moff is there, Kristen Johnson.
But, Chair, I signed with the understanding that at this meeting, we would
Right.
have an
Understood.
opportunity to possibly
And that's what
address
we did.
any concerns. And I don't know if there is a motion on the floor right now.
I haven't heard a second. though.
I'm,
But the
I'm,
answer, hang on, hold on, one thing at a time, folks. Hold on. So the question was, who are the 9? And so we're showing you the 9.
and then we had
And then
people online.
There's 6.
1, 2.
No, no, you have Moff, you have people who are virtual,
Okay, so-
Kirschenbaum and Johnson. Those are
Okay,
3.
so that's,
9.
and Houdini's also?
Yes.
Okay, so that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
8, 9.
8. Okay, and Commissioner Kevin, you said that you signed with,
I signed with the understanding that we would be able to address the objections or concerns of individual council members at this meeting.
so if we do not address those concerns, is your vote still yes to pass or no? I'm a little bit confused.
If I would like to see if there's a motion to address any of the concerns, then I would consider keeping it open, so.
I'll set a motion.
What is your motion specifically, sir?
To go through each of the feedback items of the city council and be able to open up mapping to address them.
That's the key part of it. And
Okay.
open up mapping. There a second?
Josh, if you could entertain just a comment. I have some concerns about reopening a process that I don't know what we're reopening it for. We can have a discussion about the objections. Some of these objections we're not going to be able to address. So I'm just concerned. I would like some specifics about what it is, what districts, because, you know, the process that gets reopened, it gets reopened for all 51. So I would like to know specifically, based on the objections that we received from individual council members, some of which we might be able to easily address, some of which we might not be able to address. And so
But it would still be
I would
reopened for
like,
the
I would like to see this motion provide some specifics, as you did on October.
Yeah, I mean,
6th.
listen, I would go back
October-
to that.
On October 6th, you provided some specifics and we had a frank and open discussion and it got voted down and then the plan was adopted. I would like to know exactly for the 8 districts? I think it might be actually more, but the districts in which there are objections, what is it specifically you're looking to change in those districts before I would consider voting for a motion to reopen the process?
I mean, firstly, the one that me and you went over the last time before it went to city council, my mind has not changed from where I was that day. So.
But it's only reopen for one
that's-
district? I mean, because
I mean,
Well,
listen,
but
I'm one
what's
person. I
the,
think,
what's the
you know,
specifics of that proposal? I don't know what it is. It hasn't been articulated here.
Well, we can vote on the motion if there's a second to it.
So I mean, what I would like to, I wouldn't have an objection to is if there's a motion for the staff to make a presentation about the objections with details and with some analysis, I wouldn't have an objection with that. I mean, that's why we're here this evening.
But
I
that's
would
not
have
Josh's
an
motion at this
objection
point.
to giving a blanket endorsement to reopening a process when it may result in, 8, if there were 8 objections that we can't satisfy. I mean, just because someone made an objection in this process, doesn't necessarily mean it's a coherent objection and one that can be resolved and through this process.
Well, that's why I think we should open it up.
so your motion is to open up the process.
Yes. I
Okay.
don't see.
I'll second it.
Okay,
We've had discussion.
all right.
And we have call the roll. So Kristen Johnson,
No.
Judge Go,
No.
Moff Udine. Moff? No, he's right there.
He's muted.
It's muted.
Moff? Okay, I'll go back.
Yes,
Are you saying yes to reopening the process or yes that you are answering my question?
you're asking me?
Moff, yes. Are you voting yes or no on reopening the process?
I thought the 9 already voted, so I voted no.
No, okay. No, you were muted. Yvonne Collado?
No.
No. Greg Kirschenbaum?
Definitely not this process. The time to vote on this was when we sent it 13-1 to the city council.
Monsignor Sullivan? I vote no. Mr. Schnall?
No.
Darren Portia?
No.
Mr. Hanratty? Commissioner Hanratty?
Yes.
Commissioner Roselle?
No.
Commissioner Soren?
Yes.
Commissioner Mateo? Commissioner Schnapp,
Yes.
and Commissioner Wong.
Yes.
1, 2, 3. I have 4 or 5? 10-5. Right?
Yes, the motion does
Motion
not pass.
Does not pass. All right, so when we can go the other way, and we have a motion,
I make a motion to file the certification.
I will second that motion to file the
I
certification.
third that motion.
All right, we have a roll
Or-
call. All right, Commissioner Johnson. No, we have a motion on the floor. We have a motion on the floor. And I've been very good as far as adhering to the motions on the floor. Motion on the floor to certify. Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Go,
Yes.
Commissioner Udine,
Yes,
Commissioner Collado,
absolutely, yes.
Commissioner Kirschenbaum,
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan. I vote yes. Commissioner Schnall, Commissioner Portia,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanratty,
Yes.
Commissioner Roselle,
Yes.
Commissioner Soren, Commissioner Mateo, Commissioner Schnapp,
No.
Commissioner Wong.
No.
Okay. 11-4, motion passes. Could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move.
Motion to
Thank you.
adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Thank you.